The spirit of tonight is just as it's titled, dialogue. The idea here is not a debate or a fight, it's a discussion. This is, on the face of it, a relatively non-controversial topic, sports and society, but we know that sports brings out a lot of passion from people, and hopefully we're going to hear some of that tonight. We're going to hear you guys get excited about some of the things that we're doing, but ultimately what we want to do is engage you in conversation. So the way this works is our panelists up here are going to start that conversation. Ann's going to ask some questions and get our two guests involved in discussion. But pretty soon after that, at about the 20-minute mark, we want to hear from you. And we're a small enough group that we think we can make this more conversational quickly. The way that's going to work is there are microphones on either side here. And when Ann cues you, please start to line up if you have a question, and the idea is to engage both our audience and all of us in this conversation. So if something stimulates you to get up and get in line, please do so, and we'll look forward to engaging you in conversation. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ann to introduce our guests here, or I can do that. This is Gene Smith, who is the athletic director for Ohio State University. He represents the collegiate side of our conversation. And on my left, your right, is Dr. Pete Edwards, an orthoscopic surgeon here in Columbus, who has been the team doctor for the Columbus Crew since its inauguration in the mid-1990s. More recently, he has joined a group of other investors to invest in the new Crew Stadium that will be coming downtown soon. And so we have the professional side of the equation represented here as well. And so we'll have a lively discussion of sports issues and the crossover between the collegiate and professional side. So with that, Ann, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. The revelations last week that the Justice Department had indicted 50 people, including collegiate coaches at prestigious universities, over allegations of cheating to get kids in college. It raised questions about the value we place on sports. In the case of Lori Loughlin, the actress, she paid $500,000 to get her daughters accepted to USC as Crew recruits, even though neither participated in the sport. Now, that's just cheating, and it's as simple as that, and anybody can cheat at anything. The idea is, though, is that you get on a coach's list. And a lot of people didn't know about this, and that helps grease the skids. You later drop out, or you never get on the team at all, and you just benefit from being on that list. And that kind of, in a related piece that I was reading about this, the idea was put forth that not only has an elite college degree taken on a wildly inflated importance in American society, but the sports industrial complex enjoys wildly inflated power within universities. And that kind of brings me around to the whole question of the relationship between that sports industrial complex and universities, and where it starts and where it ends, and what it has done to, and how it has influenced our notion of sports. And I guess, we could start with you. Why? Because I was just kind of turned that way.
Am I turned on? Can people hear me? Am I on? No?
Yeah, there you go.
There? Okay. Might need technical assistance. How about now?
No.
I can speak loud enough. Can you hear me? Okay, well, obviously, and that's a great question. And I think first and foremost, when you go back to the case that you talked about, there's bad actors everywhere. So at the end of the day, we had bad actors who became entrepreneurial, and they found an avenue to take advantage of people and ultimately scam universities to get their daughters or sons in. And so when you look at sports and tying to that, sports became a victim of some bad actors. And there's bad actors in the sport industry, the coaches, who were susceptible to an entrepreneurial approach to trying to get young people into college. So going to your meat of your question, though, it's really all about the institution and the leadership and the values that the institution puts in place around its sports programs, and what you strive to do with your sports programs. In our case, obviously, at The Ohio State University, it goes back for years. We're trying to create an environment for student athletes to be successful academically, athletically, and grow as people behaviorally. And so we're integrated in the institution. Obviously, when this came out, we went and scrubbed our walk-on list yeah, you just, you go back because you just start to look back over time and said, okay, were we taken advantage of in the same way? And God bless, fortunately we were not. But obviously there were a number of schools who had loopholes who were susceptible to this. We were fortunate because we're totally integrated into our admissions department. Athletics has nothing to do with admissions. So we have a faculty committee that makes decisions on dance students or music students or athletic students who may not fit the profile of the institution. So they make a decision on whether or not they're admitted or not. So we have a process to protect ourselves against that situation. But to your meat of your question, the reality is it's all about the leadership and how sports at that institution is maintained. Keep in mind there's 351 Division I schools in this country, and when things like this happen, we tend to generalize and say they're all that way. You went to Michigan State, Pete went to Vanderbilt. The reality is they're great institutions that do it the right way, and there's some that do it the wrong way, and then there's some individuals who do it the wrong way.
Do you think that sports is put on a pedestal and expected to have different standards, different, higher standards for that kind of thing, and that this is just normal cheating that happens almost in every level of society, and it gets picked on at all?
I think that sports does provide an opportunity for people to be role models when they might not otherwise be role models. And sometimes that works out great, and people step up and they represent themselves and their teams well, and sometimes people misbehave. And we see that in sports all the time, but it does provide the visibility that their mistakes are more magnified, just as in this case. There's corporate corruption every day that doesn't get this much press, but in this kind of situation with athletics and universities, it becomes a big story.
One of the questions that popped up last week was someone said, well, what happens in other countries? And of course, in other countries, they don't have the system that we have. And you may experience that. I mean, as far as the crew goes, in soccer, there's a lot of different players from around the world.
It is, and the systems are vastly different in other countries. There is a lot more under-the-table dealings in other countries, and the culture in soccer is just different in other countries. So what would be frowned on here is standard in Brazil, or in many of the South American countries. Everyone that participates in a player's career as they move through the junior ranks to the lower level professional ranks, everyone is kind of expected to take a cut, and that's part of the business. So it's a cultural thing, and that's not viewed as a problem there. That's the way their culture is. So I think that, and that's true here.
Yeah, that is kind of a different thing. As you were talking, I was thinking, that's an international sport, and I wonder how that affects the complexion of that compared to sports we usually, kind of associate with the United States alone.
Yeah, I think it's, am I on again? I can't hear. I think it's really a different situation for us in the United States because we have a progression that's different than other countries. I'm blessed to be married to a Canadian who played for the Olympic basketball team in Canada, and her experience coming up through Canada to get to where she got to is different than what we have in the United States. And this really ties to your last question about role models and where we have, in my view, fallen down more is frankly in our K-12 systems. And so many of the athletes that come to us, we're reprogramming You know, we're modifying how they think in order to take advantage of their opportunities. And so we have a different system than Europe. It's just a whole different system for those soccer players and how they get to the pros. So we have an opportunity to teach life skills, an opportunity to help young people mold their values and strengthen their character. But now we're kind of trapped in this new world of what's happening in our K through 12 club programming, and we're trying to, you know, back in the day, I'm looking at most of the people in this room, you know, we probably went through different experiences than our children and our grandchildren that caused us to respond to a direction from an adult. I'm just being out, this is straight up. And so our challenge today is helping young people learn discipline, a different level of commitment at the collegiate level, because when they get to the pro level, it's business. It's totally business.
Well, it's business at the collegiate level, too.
It is, but not at, well, it's true. But the thing that we have to keep in mind in that business, you still have 17-year-old young people who aren't mature enough to make that quantum leap to that level yet. There's some, but that number is very small. So we have majority of our challenges, and we get about 219 new ones every year, 220, and they're very diverse in their maturity and immaturity. And so how do we, to your point, help them jump to that business spectrum really fast in an intellectual way, a mature way?
You know, around the world, I mean, are they coming from clubs? They're not coming from schools.
No, it's a little bit different in Europe and in South America, but the South American example is there's residential academies where the 12-year-old elite player will actually go and live at a community that is centered around soccer. They have medical care, they have their schooling, they eat, they have their friends, the families come visit, and they may move from you know, their hometown to another club somewhere, and then they will spend their adolescence there training in a fully incorporated, fully integrated soccer environment. And never see a high school, never see a formal school, and it's all run through the club.
It almost sounds like Hogwarts or something, you know? It's like, I mean, when I think about what the kids, the elite athletes today, when they're little, when they're young, how they start going off on a different path very young. You know, the elite hockey players, that's probably the game I follow the closest, and they'll take them off when they're 15, 16 years old, and they have them in clubs and on the another part of the country. And they're not growing up the way the rest of us do.
That's true. That's a little bit what I was saying earlier. It's just so different today. They become more specialized, you know, kind of like other countries. And there's states that require a young person to make a decision at a certain age which sport they're going to compete in. And you know, I'm old school. I'm just philosophically against that. I believe you cross-train your body by playing multiple sports. I think you learn by being in other sports different things about being around different people, and so there's life skills that are learned when you do that. But to your point, we have become so specialized at a younger age. I think we're sometimes hurting our children because they're picking one sport. We have more pre-existing injuries than we've ever had in the collegiate environment because kids are coming to us and all they've done is gymnastics from the time they were 6. Or all they've done is soccer from the time they were 9. And they haven't cross-trained their ligaments. We have kids who are lifting at the age of 6. And it's crazy. And so, you know, I'm a big believer that we should discontinue contact football prior to the age of 13. And we should be playing flag football to the age of 13. It makes no sense for these kids to be tackling one another when they don't even know how to tackle. And so it's just so many things, and that we've done, and I think part of it is the pro level, the collegiate level, that's pushed it to this behavior at the younger level.
You know, whenever I talk to someone like you in a position like yours or yours, That's what they say. They wish that they could just back off on the exclusivity of a sport and cross-train and all that kind of stuff, but do you ever see it? Well, what do you think it's done intrinsically? And again, I feel like I'm a little bit kind of back and forth because I feel like soccer is so much different than so many of the traditional collegiate sports, but we don't go backwards. So where do we go from here to try to
Well, there's some movements.
inculcate the right things?
Yeah, there's some movements. What's nice is, the Dispatch did a great article a while ago about this topic and cross-training, and there's some movements nationally in different spaces. My flag football initiative, for example, there's some people, some committees and different people talking about that. You hear more and more flag football being promoted, so it's going to have to be intentional but yet organic. And I think over time you'll see some change. I don't think you're going to have the wholesale change that we all hope because it's too much money, to your point. A parent in Plano, Texas, who thinks their son is going to have an opportunity to get a scholarship and go pro, they're going to make that investment in that young person when they're 9 years old and keep going. So that piece is not going to ever change. But hopefully we can nibble at the edges and affect some children.
Yeah, in soccer, I think it can be driven by the coaches and by the clubs somewhat, because the higher you go in your level of coaching, the more you are dependent on your players being healthy. And when they ultimately want to win. And if you're losing your star player every other year, then you start to think more about prevention. And as an orthopedic surgeon who's been in the soccer realm for so long, we've been able to develop programs that the coaches now are doing in their youth training that will decrease the ACL injury rate, that decreases the hamstrings. And that's partly because they're doing the right things for the kids, and they don't want their kids to get hurt. But at the end of the day, they look like better coaches if their star players are on the field. Mm-hmm. So it's easy to do that. I just spoke with our data scientist with the crew about overlying sports metrics with our performance metrics and how that plays into the whole picture of making everyone look better. Your players have longer careers, they're more successful, but at the end of the day, your coach is more successful, your fans are happier because you've done a better job in managing them from an injury prevention standpoint. So we all have the same goal. We want our players to be healthy, we want them to have fun, we want them to mature and learn life's lessons from sports. And part of that is letting them be on the field and being healthy. And as society evolves and as the coaches have evolved to understand that, it's a little easier to sell the prevention part to them. And we've been gradually nibbling away at that over time. And people are starting to really understand that you can prevent injuries if you're willing to spend a little extra time doing it.
I wonder how much all of this is influenced by the coaches. Obviously, the coaches are a huge influence, but by their own specialization. And I was doing interviewing a former swimming coach from Cleveland State University about another coach at Cleveland State, John McClendon, who was the first African-American basketball coach at a predominantly white university, and he actually became the first African-American to coach pro basketball, but he also coached swimming, and he also taught, and just in the classroom. I think it had to do with coaching skills, but be that as it may, it made me think about how he was much more of a well-rounded athlete himself, and therefore maybe a more well-rounded person.
No, I agree with you, and John McClendon is one of my heroes. I'm actually on their scholarship board, and he's one of my stars. But the progression over time in sports, because of the passion around it that all of us have, it's just changed our model to a point where coaches became specialized, to your question. And it starts at the high school and the collegiate level. The high school level, our coaches used to coach multiple sports, and they used to teach. Well, now you have someone who's a marketing representative from IBM coming to coach, and they're not walking the halls of the high school. Now, that's not everywhere. Obviously, we have our high school system in this state is off the chain. So we have a lot of great coaches in a lot of sports who are coaching multiple sports. But in our society as a whole, That's one thing that's changed. And it's changed at the collegiate level. If you think back to Ohio State, Woody Hayes taught. He was a teacher in the classroom. And we just changed, over time, the models changed, to your point, where the coaches have become specialized, the athletes have become specialized, and it goes to your earlier comment, it's turned into a business. The passion and the money in sport has really driven this thing to another level.
Another thing I don't see, that I used to see all the time were kids outside playing. I'm old like you.
You're mature.
Mature. You grew up and the kids did the kickball games or, the baseball or not when I was growing up, but I imagine there was some kind of facsimile of a soccer game out there somewhere. Football, pickup football. The whole basketball thing. It's in some neighborhoods it's still more than others, but we are also a nation that is on the brink of a serious obesity epidemic. So we talk about how sports is king in this country and what a big influence it has, but mostly people are sitting and watching it. They're not doing it. And I wonder what that does.
Well, soccer participation is really, really expanding, and the sport is really growing from a participation standpoint. And part of our role in being a community asset with the crew is that we want to create avenues where our youth can be active. So we're committed to developing small field courts where people can go drop a ball. We just did our first at Eakin Elementary about 3 weeks ago, where they're called futsal courts, but it basically can be the size of a basketball court. It's enclosed, they have built-in goals and a permanent field, and it's a place where you can go drop a ball. And our goal is to provide avenues that are safe for kids to be active and more healthy, because we know from research that if kids are engaged in athletics and they're happy and they're active, they stay in school better, they're more engaged in life, and they're ultimately going to do better. So I think we need to encourage that, and that's our goal as kind of mentors in the community, is to hopefully promote volunteerism and to promote kids being out and being active. And soccer's a great way to do it, because you can have a pickup game with 2 people,
Easy.
3 people. You don't need a team. Right. So that's the beauty. You can roll up towels like they do in South America, or trash. Right. When we were in Brazil 3 years ago, the kids would clump trash together, and that's what they would make their ball out of, and they would play in the street. So,
yeah, and I'm going to add to that a couple of things. Because our son just kind of coined this comment that kids no longer go out and play, as you said earlier. They go out and work on something. Mm-hmm. We grew up, our parents told us, get out of the house, go play. Mm-hmm. Now you hear, go work on your pitching, go work on your jump shot, go work on this. And so the whole behavior has changed, which obviously changes the culture. But, Ohio State is just like Pete says, we've tried to take a civic responsibility in this as well. Years ago, we used to get from the federal government, a number of schools across the country used to get funding from the federal government to do camps for kids. And over time, that funding went away. So we made a decision to keep it going, and now it's called Life Sports. And it's our largest outreach program into the Columbus community. And the idea behind it at the time was to just bring kids who from underprivileged areas and teach them sports. Well, we changed that model. So a young person that comes to our Life Sports, they, depending upon their age, they may go into the classroom and learn about conflict resolution. They may go into the classroom and learn about time management. But then they'll go out and learn about swimming. And then they'll go and learn about lacrosse. Biggest thing we did was give them a hot meal in the morning, which is more important than anything we could teach them. And then we give them a hot meal at lunch, okay? And then we send them home about 3. But we interspersed life skills teachings in the classrooms along with the sports. And so every year we run this for 4 weeks. We get about 700 kids, and we have to cap it. But it's the John Glenn School works with us on it. Social work works with us on it. But what's interesting is majority of these kids, when they leave our camp, they want to go to college. They want to go to college. And they're kids right here in our community who have never been on our campus.
I know.
Never been on our campus. And so some of you may have heard of our Buckeyes Care program, which is the same thing. Most of these kids have never been in our stadiums, never been in our arenas. And so now we bring them into our arenas and just to inspire them, but also teach them to take care of themselves, to teach them what's the right thing to eat. And so there's so many different things around that, and Pete's 100% right. When you have sports industry, sports units that have the right values, then you take on that responsibility. And all of them don't. All of them don't.
Well, I see that I did the same thing I did last time I hosted and moderated one of these things. I went over my time. We are now open up for questions from the audience, and I can go on and on, but I would love to hear from our audience members too. So come on down. We have mics at either side of the room. And just state your name.
Thank you. David Nickel, and our son Scott was on the OSU varsity tennis team. So, and Dr. Edwards did surgery on our daughter-in-law, Lori, ACL ligament. Thank you. Thank you. So my question is, Kaepernick situation, protesting a social justice issue at an athletic event. Do you think that's a bad idea, a good idea? Would you promote that or not promote it at OSU, Gene, and Dr. Edwards at professional level?
Well, I wouldn't promote it at any level. I believe that he, as well as our student athletes, have a right to express their beliefs and their feelings in the way they want to, but they need to understand the consequences. And so when that occurred, we met with all of our teams, including our tennis team, and we talked about, what's the lesson here? What he was trying to do was send a message about injustice. He chose that platform. If you're interested in sharing a particular position, just understand the consequences. We try not to tell our kids what they can and can't do in that space. They have individual rights like everybody else. So we just try and educate them. And so, no, I don't promote it, but my duty to parents and to those young people is to teach them the appropriate way to express themselves and then understand the repercussions on how they choose to do that.
Thanks, Gene.
Yeah, and I agree wholeheartedly with what Gene said. I think that that speaks to the bigger question of is that athletes are put in a situation and sports teams are put in a situation to have an impact on society. And Kaepernick chose that way to influence society, and hopefully here in Columbus we'll choose a different way with the crew to provide opportunities to partner with the community, encourage volunteerism, and do things that shine a good light on our community and on our team. But I think the core principle is that the athletes and the teams are put in situations that affect communities. From the crew standpoint, we are very lucky that the community affected us. And the community rose up and imparted their will and their character and their ability to come together and show really a kind of an epic story in reverse. But hopefully we can give that back and we can create a message back the other way, a little different than Colin Kaepernick chose, but still using our platform to promote good and do good things in the city. So it's the same idea, just a little different take, hopefully.
When you talk about doing it differently and giving them the right of expression and that kind of a thing, a lot of people say, well, what's wrong with what he did? I mean, what do we mean by that?
Well, I think different people take it different ways.
Right.
So I think it's just in the eye of the beholder or your thought process. And, whether he's being disrespectful to the flag, whether he's being disrespectful to his teammates, whether he's being disrespectful to the game, it just depends on your point of view. And I look at Malcolm Jenkins, one of our blessed former athletes who's phenomenal. he chose a different route. He went and started meeting with the police officers in his community and tried to understand how he could connect them with community leaders in the Philadelphia area, in the different communities, so that they would have a relationship. And so he was trying to look at it a different way. He didn't feel he needed to go and, do something of that nature. So everybody has a different viewpoint, a different way of expressing themselves, and it's in the eye of the beholder, I think. Did that answer your?
Yeah, I did. I had one more question, but maybe you want to alternate.
Go ahead.
Oh, so this is titled, "This is Sports and Society," and I notice that we have 4 grandsons, and they're playing soccer on Sunday mornings. Now, I'm not a rigid moralist, and you may hopefully don't have that impression. I don't get that. But I just think, is sports taking over in some ways? Now, I should probably go to the organizers and say, why are you scheduling soccer on Sunday mornings? Because, they could do that in the afternoon. I just think when you put that ahead of, let's say, for lack of better words, faith or, coming to grips with spirituality and that kind of thing, it's completely inappropriate. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think life's a balance, right? And I think learning to balance, we talk about that all the time in medicine, where someone will have an injury and we'll say, well, you probably need to have your meniscus fixed, but life gets in the way. My mom's sick, I can't take time off work, I might lose my job. So I think that you have to figure out how to balance those things, and especially for the younger kids, I think that's the opportunity to teach them that just because the coach says you need to go to Sunday morning practice, maybe there's a family time there, dinner time, right? You try to respect dinner time, no phones at the table. This is a time for us to sit and have some family time, and it's an opportunity to teach boundaries. So I get it. Soccer's played every minute, every day, all over, right? The leagues go until 2 in the morning, Fridays and Saturdays, and people tell me, when did you get hurt? I got hurt at 12:30 in the morning playing a soccer game, because that's when we could get time on the indoor pitch. So, but I think just like anything else, it's a balancing act, and you take different opportunities to teach your kids and to teach yourself about opportunities that you have to make decisions with what you do.
Well, I just want to say, I was not talking about practicing. I was talking about actual games.
Oh, yeah,
So,
right.
For
just
sure.
want to make that clear.
They're all the time. No, it's especially in the winter.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi there. Pam Conrad, sports fan, John Glenn College fan. I'd like to ask a question about a particularly beneficial way that I think sports fit within society that I think is getting underestimated. And I'd like your opinions about this. To me, one of the greatest values of sports in America is that it brings together people of multiple cultures, multiple beliefs, multiple philosophies, multiple political philosophies together in a similar goal. We've got a very grave problem in America right now, which is how horribly divided we are. Yet, on any given Saturday afternoon at Ohio Stadium, I'm sitting next to a Trump fan, or I'm sitting next to a person from another country. It's a wonderful opportunity to have wonderful conversations and something significant in common with each other that sports wouldn't. You go to a crew game, at any given crew game, I don't doubt that there are probably people in that stadium from 15, 20, 25 different countries. Am I right?
Yeah.
And they're talking to each other, and they happen to share a love of the crew together. I think this is getting underrated on the national scene. I think sports is underrated as being probably one of the few places in American society right now where people of so many different beliefs and faiths and attitudes and cultures are actually coming together. How can we improve that?
Wow, you're giving my next speech, but you're 100% right. I applaud you for that recognition. because you hit the nail on the head. I grew up on the east side of Cleveland, went to the University of Notre Dame, and the super majority of those people didn't look like me, okay? And I wasn't Catholic. And so to have the opportunity to be in that environment, and you just hit it on the head. That's the lessons that's learned. We asked the football team, Greg is going to appreciate this, and all of you who are Buckeye fans appreciate this, and let's go back to the Archie Griffin days, and we asked 5 guys on an offensive line to come together and play 80 plays in a football game on offense. And we asked them, to your point, to do everything that they can to make sure we do one thing, and that's outscore our opponent. And we asked that right tackle, who was probably from Lima, Ohio, sophomore. We asked that right guard, who might be from Glenville High School in Cleveland. We might ask that center, who might be from Macon, Georgia, Protestant. We might ask that left guard, who might be from California, who came from a very affluent background. To your point, we asked those 5 guys to set aside all their differences, come together and execute flawlessly, so that we can outscore our opponent. And that happens in the locker room. And by the way, that happens with every single sport we have. It happens at the crew level, it happens at the collegiate level, it happens all across the board. But to your point, it's something, it's just like everything that we have. We started out with a question around a scandal. It's just like it's what we do. We start out with a question around a scandal as opposed to talking about, what's good in our world. Our society is at a point where we never talk about planes landing safely. We don't talk about the planes that crash.
Well, that's
That's who we are.
Fights dog, though. I mean.
No, I'm just saying, but that's to her question.
Yeah.
You can do all you can to promote that, but our society won't embrace it because we'd rather hear about the plane crashing. And that's the sad part of where we are in our country.
But a really great thing about sports is it's a tremendous unifier. And the Save the Crew effort is a perfect example of that. This has been a unifier for our city. This has been something that proved that the Columbus way is real and tangible, and that our city can do things that not every city can do. And so it's unified the city on a common goal to do something that we never thought we could do, which is save a professional sports team that was supposed to be moved. And no one person did it. The Save the Crew movement did it, the government, the city. So all the parts of the city rallied together to come together to create a really, really special thing. And the narrative of that story will live in the history of Columbus forever, as it shows that we can rally around something that we really value, that our core beliefs are something that we can act on, and we can do things as a community that we didn't think we could do. So it's a wonderful message for Columbus, and it's something that the city should be proud of for forever.
The diversity that you're talking about and the unifying aspect of sports is certainly true in the big sports, particularly the ones we see all the time. But it's been clearly shown that in a lot of the sports, that the scholarship sports at universities, it is not as diverse as basketball, football, and a few. Soccer, I think, is diverse primarily because of its international appeal, but there still is not, who gets to go to swimming class all their life and gets to take diving lessons or gets to go to the soccer camps or whatever. It's people.
But what's interesting, Ann, is those sports might not be diverse from an ethnicity point of view or a race point of view. But the reality is a lot of those young people are from different environments.
Socioeconomic?
Yeah, socioeconomic, raised differently, different religions, different beliefs. So the diversity is broad. It's just not in race and ethnicity. It's when we look at our swimming team, that is all white. The reality is I still see diversity in a different way because many of them come from different backgrounds. So it's just not embedded in race. So.
Hello?
You ready?
Yep.
Okay, didn't know whether you had more to
Nope.
lead them down the road on, but I want to follow up on Pam's. I'm Greg Lashetka. I'm proud to be here. At the outset, let me thank first Dr. Edwards for continuing the legacy of the crew. We fought hard on World Cup to bring the world to Columbus. Missed that. We got an inaugural franchise. They're staying. Thank you. To Gene, I was honored to serve on your athletic council, and I really wanted to peek under the sheets as a former athlete. And let me just say to you, I really was impressed with the quality of the program across the board in all the sports, not just football, of which I'm a veteran of. But I think it was Whizzer White who talked about, I look at the sports page first because the first page is too disturbing to me. And I think that is true yet today. And Title IX has made a difference. I think the Home of Walter Mitty by James Thurber has young and old all looking for something good, and sports provides that. There's still the pickup games, less than there used to be when I was growing up. But we talked a little bit at the beginning about maybe the top 1 or 2%. My opinion is that 95% of those who participate don't go on to college, get the lessons of playing by the rules, playing fairly by coaches who care, sometimes too much parent interference, but how to respect other teammates and become better citizens more often than not. And I'd like to hear just a little bit more broadly from our two guests how they see that and get just a little different perspective than just the tragedy that occurred, I think, in the recent collegiate effort. But that's greed has always been around. But I think the impact now, particularly with women, as I used to look at resumes more than I do now, if there's an athlete, often a Eagle Scout and others, I'll give them an interview and look at them, and they're really great people. So sports helps produce that. Your thoughts, please.
I agree 100%. You know, it's so funny. We tend to talk about the 2%, the 3%, but there's a lot of young people who go through our K through 12 system that never go to college, and they're doing exceptionally well. They benefited from all the things that we talked about, learned about time management, learned about discipline, learned about working with people from all walks of life, learn how to overcome adversity, just great work ethic, all the things that you learn in sport, they learned, and they're thriving. The same thing exists in the college level. You know, majority of our young people don't go pro, and so, but they get hired. You know, we had 49 graduates last December, and 47 of them, before they walked across the stage, knew what they were going to do. Because corporations come to hire them. And so you're 100% right. And most of the time the corporations never ask what their GPA was. They just hired a great athlete. But at the end of the day, I think you hit on something. We tend to always kind of nibble at the edges on the 2 to 3 or 4%, but there's a lot that are doing exceptionally well.
Yeah, I think the life lessons from playing sports are more important than the sport themselves. It's learning to be on a team. It's learning to have a shared goal. It's learning that not everyone scores the touchdown, but that's okay because you're supporting the team, and the idea that working towards a common goal, I think, creates a great hire if you're looking to hire someone, because you know someone's going to be a good team maker, a good teammate, and a good worker. So it instills so many important values in kids as they grow up. Time management, and teamwork are paramount to what you do, and I think that's why everybody should play some. And you don't have to be good. It's not about the outcome. It's about playing and being on a team.
Before I depart, if I could just for a moment, I brought my granddaughter with me, Piper, who's going to graduate this fall, played volleyball and other sports, and I think she has, without question, learned a lot of lessons and represents that kind of person who won't go on to college and play sports, but make a difference in our society. So thank you very much.
Go Boston College.
He wants to be an Eagle.
Hi.
John Shue, I'm a high school soccer coach, and I know you were describing sort of the hired gun that comes in and doesn't teach at the school and coaches, and only coaches. So for what it's worth, that's basically me. But I would agree with you that I would wholeheartedly agree with you that my role as a coach, first and foremost, is that of a mentor, right? Developing that maturity level, that discipline, teaching those life lessons. I guess what I wanted to get your thoughts on was what the role of the parents is or should be. I know one of the things that I've found myself saying a lot when I'm talking to other coaches, or what I've heard other coaches say is, gosh, if only I could just talk to the kid instead of having to deal with mom and dad as well. I don't know if you've seen that change over the years, or get your thoughts on that.
That's the story of my life. 50% of my patients are under 21, and it's amazing, but every one of the kids I see is going to play in the World Cup, according to their parents. And I think there's rules that are put in place at the youth levels where the child needs to talk to the coach first. And in the high school level, that's a very common thing, is that the player needs to approach the coach, and if they have a problem, then they include the athletic director, and then if after they've included the athletic director, then they include the parent. So I think that there's some truth to the fact that, if the parents were a little more to the side, that wouldn't be bad. But, everyone needs to be included, everyone needs to have a voice, but I think it teaches kids a lot if they can start to address the problem on their own first, and lots of times that's part of them maturing and learning the value of sports, is that I have to talk to the coach. I have to say why I'm not happy. I have to be able to have a conversation with someone that might not be the most comfortable thing about why I'm not playing, or why, my friend, is playing forward when I want to play, forward. So I think that's part of the growth process, and if we can encourage kids to start it and work through a schedule that promotes them making independent choices, it's a good thing for their growth.
I think all coaches, and coaches are engineers of a young person's life, and I think coaches like you and others need to have a parent management plan. You have to have a strategy. So if you're an athlete, a young athlete, 12 years old, 13 years old, 14 years old, and you're playing a sport, and your parents are yelling up in the stands, telling you to do certain things, in lacrosse saying, knock that guy out or whatever, that athlete on that field, the only voice they hear is their parents. And so how do you help that young person deal with that? Some are mature enough to be able to do it themselves. Some may not. I was with a gentleman in Virginia the other day, and he's a lacrosse coach, and we were talking about this very thing. And he does exactly that. He will go talk to that parent and help them see themselves. There's a reason we have parents fighting in stands now. There's a reason, because we've let them. And so the reality is, I just think that we've gotten to a point where we can't teach you how to do your job effectively, because you got another job, right?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, you're no longer in the high school. That was my point earlier. To your point, Pete, but in the high school system, the way it was, and it is in a lot of places, I just don't want to generalize this, but there's a lot of coaches who aren't taught how to do these things because they're coming from wherever they're coaching, and because they're passionate and want to help young people, but they're not in the school system being taught by a principal or other coaches from other sports, hey, this is how we should deal with parents. That just doesn't exist in a lot of places, and so you have what we have. So anyway, that's a long answer to your question, but I recommend you have a parent management plan, and good luck with it.
When we do go to license classes and trainings, a lot of times there's almost no discussion of parents, right? I mean, you focus on how you conduct your training, what drills you're going to do, how you're going to interact with players, mostly, not so much the parents.
Well, you can lead it in your next session. Hey, we need to add this.
Well, I used to scream in the stands, but my kid always swore he couldn't hear a thing.
Yeah, right. What else are you going to say?
I did actually have a player once turn around and tell Dad to shut up. So.
Yes, sir.
Good evening.
Hi.
Yes, I'm a soccer coach too. So coached in different high schools in Columbus and a couple places. But the point I really want to drive home concerning sports contribution to society is actually what I witnessed firsthand. Okay, way back a couple years ago, Nelson Mandela was the president of South Africa. So, in his time, there was this football rugby competition in South Africa. And what I witnessed have never left me in terms of sports contribution to our societies. I witnessed where a country can become a United Nations, just briefly in one day. In fact, with the victory of South Africa on that particular day, the whole country somehow just come together. The whole country, everywhere we travel to, that feeling is something that just have not left me. I'm still looking forward to having something that will resemble that. So I'm wondering, in so many different cultures, I didn't grow up in the US, but I've seen a little bit. In our very different cultures, different modes of doing things. Is there any way we can begin to work on things like this? I don't know the answer myself. But once you feel it, you just feel it's a learning. It's quite exceptional to have a country come together because of a single win. Well, all is history. Mandela enjoyed every bit of it. The country was able to actually, it was able to govern. It was able to, let's say that. That contributed to success. Sports did that for him. So it's not really a question, but how far are we really to get into this stage?
Well, it's actually a great statement, but you had a question embedded in there, actually, in a different way. So I don't know, because that is a moment for all of our world to see in our country to embrace. I think we all know that story, and that's putting it at the top of the pyramid of the effect of sports. And those things just don't happen without that type of leader, and probably that type of chaos. But at the end of the day, that's one of the best there ever was. But I will share with you that we may not think of it in that large, holistic, global way of affecting a country, but it does affect different environments. And so I look at our role at The Ohio State University around our sports program is to contribute to the pride that our Buckeye Nation has, to contribute to esprit de corps in our environment on our campus. When we win, people feel good. They have pride in what we do. Now, the thing that we always have to keep in front of us is do it the right way. Do it the right way. And we've made mistakes. We fall on our face a lot of times, but how do we respond? And so at the end of the day, that's in a small spirit compared to what you're talking about. That's at another level. But I think sports are doing that. And I think right here, perfect one, is really what we saw with the crew. I mean, Pete articulated it real well. The impact on our community in watching the spirit of our people come together to do what was done. Again, smaller scale than what you're talking about.
What so many people said was impossible. And I think that at that time in South Africa, a lot of people thought it was impossible to unite under a team like that. And so impossible things do happen when it comes to sports. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
My name is Peter Shahada. I'm an avid supporter of Ohio State athletics and a season ticket holder for the crew first season. So one thing that you did emphasize is, I guess, the rise of obesity. And I know that they try to have courts and playgrounds that make it more accessible. What other ways can be done, like through educating programs, that we can educate younger people on the importance that our health can play an important role if we have the right resources in our community?
Well, I think there's several ways that can happen. The athletes and the teams can use their notoriety to support good eating habits. We can also create programs through camps like Gene was talking about in the summer, where healthy options are explained. We can partner with local charities. Greg Berhalter and my wife and I have become involved with Local Matters. And a lot of the crew guys now are interested in that group, which has a lot to do with healthy eating in the schools and in the communities around Columbus. So I think there's lots of avenues that we can promote that will help with the eating part. But the other part is the activity part. So if they become fans and they're excited about the game, then they get outside and they're more active, because it's a calories in, calories out kind of equation. So Michael Phelpses of the world can eat 10 stacks of pancakes and go swim 3 miles in a day and not gain a pound. So it's a balance of intake and outtake, and I think we can teach about the intake and then provide outlets for the output and maybe help a little bit on both sides.
Right, and I think it would be a tremendous opportunities, maybe partnering with like a lot more local, like holistic nutritionists too, because I think that's been a trend that's been growing, is people trying to find ways to eat holistically and try to get their sources from a lot of whole foods, and that can in a way promote better and active lifestyle. And in other workouts, as you would allude to, Mr. Smith, is just being more flexible, not just doing one sport, but even doing yoga, for example, I feel would be a tremendous opportunity, because that could improve an athlete's longevity.
Yeah.
All of our kids do that. That's great.
Yeah, the star of the LA Galaxy, Ibrahimovic, is a devout yoga enthusiast, and one of the reasons our ex-coach, whose birthday was a couple days ago and he's passed away now, Siggy Schmid, when he coached him, he said part of his ability is due to his extreme flexibility. He's a big guy, very athletic, but the fact that he can put his foot up above his head is not an accident for him. It's due to years of practicing yoga and being that flexible that allows him to do things that a lot of people can't do.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Megan Chwansky. I'm a professor at Otterbein in sport management. And my question is really for Dr. Edwards. A lot of our students were really interested in the Save the Crew movement. We had someone come speak to them about kind of the community activism. And I wonder if you can give us some insights into how the ownership structure is kind of working out. I think on paper, you bring quite different experiences to the team as compared to the Haslam. So how are your experiences and backgrounds kind of working together to shape the future vision for the crew?
Well, I think that we were truly blessed through the process to have succeeded and sometimes failed, but ultimately the path to get to where we were led us to a partnership with the Haslams, and we couldn't be more happy to have had the ability to partner with them. Their philosophy is mirror to what my family believes, and that starts with community, and that was the thing that the very first day that we met in September in their kitchen, and the fact that it was in their kitchen speaks to the kind of people they are. They said, well, it starts with community, and the reason that we're interested in being involved in Columbus is because we know what it means to a community to lose a team. And that feeling of loss and the hole that's left when a team leaves, they said, we've seen that in Cleveland, we know what that feels like, and we don't want that to happen in Columbus, and if we can help you develop a partnership that can keep the team here, that we want to do that. So that was step one, and really they're the kind of people that if you go over to their house to dinner, that you say, where's Jimmy? And she says, well, he's out back cooking the steaks. So they're really regular people with regular values, and they want to create an environment here in Columbus that benefits the city, benefits the team, creates a great fan environment, does all the things that you would want them to do. So it's been really a joy working with them, and there's so many exciting things. We kind of hit the ground running. We didn't we weren't really given the keys. We were told that the keys are in the back of the house on a table, and we had to find them on January 2nd, and then we had to go find the car to start. But it's been really exciting. We're definitely still drinking from the fire hose a little bit in terms of the amount of things we're trying to do with only having basically 2 weeks before the team showed up, and we have no staff, and we have no ability to really run the franchise with the way that it started. It's a blessing to have the Browns organization behind us to give us time to build out our internal organization. So couldn't have done it without them, couldn't do it today without their experience and their integrity and their commitment to community first and foremost. And we're just excited to get the shovel in the ground this fall for the new stadium and create an environment where Columbus is proud of it. And we want to partner with the university. We have a great research initiative with the university. There's 3 or 4 papers that are going to come out this fall relating to research we did with the university in terms of sports science stuff. So we really feel like we want to be active in the community and community partners, and that people will respond to that and be proud of the team and want to do things to not only help the team but to make the city better too. So partnership's going great, and we're thrilled to have the team still here to work on it.
We're a little over. We have time for just one more question.
Hi, I'm Trevor Tucker. I'm a senior actually at Capital University. I'm graduating in May. So my question was really for you, Mr. Smith. I want to get into athletic administration. I have an internship at local Hilliard Bradley High School with their athletic administration. So my question was for you was to ask you about is there a correct path really to take to get to the collegiate level as an athletic director, or is there a wrong path even so, or what kind of advice would you give me?
How does he get your job?
Yeah, that's what I say. I mean, that's a perfect example. Back in the day, we say, "Would you just hire me?" You probably could do better than that. But anyway, there's no path. There's no definitive path to get there. What you're doing is so important relative to around your internship to learn as much as you can about the practical side of athletics. So what you're doing is important. But then beyond that, you're blessed to be in an environment where you have so many colleges. And I would recommend that you do everything you can to connect with all of those colleges, Denison, Worcester, all of them. And don't just think of the Ohio State University, because it's not about where you start. It's about where you end up at the end of the day. So just get some experience. But you have to be persistent, and you really have to do everything you can to network. So I would tell you to just get that resume together and start networking with as many people as you can in getting a job in athletic administration and in any industry, frankly. It's like a job. So dedicate 2 hours on Sunday, sit down, get on that website, pull up the contacts at the different colleges and get that resume to those people, and then follow up later. Just have to come up with different tactics like that. Hopefully that helps.
That did. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. And thanks to Dr. Pete Edwards and Mr. Gene Smith for joining us today. We appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time, and thanks for your attention as well.
Thanks for coming, everybody.